Okay, so this is the last in our series, The Rebirthing of Christianity. We've been sort of following the themes from this book, and the last theme in the book is reconnecting with love. So that's the theme that I'm speaking to this morning. I think it's lovely sitting in the round in this sort of way. But it also changes the dynamic in an interesting way. It almost feels as though I shouldn't be giving a talk, that we should be hearing one another. But I am going to give a talk, because I didn't know we were going to sit like this. But it's also very fitting that we're sitting like this, because the way that Dave has arranged the room means that we're actually sitting in 4 quadrants, and there's a centre. And so there's also actually, I'd like you to imagine we're sitting within a Celtic cross. Okay, there's some pictures of a Celtic cross on the wall over there from Richard. We're sitting within a Celtic cross, and that's actually quite significant and relevant to this morning, because it's the symbol that John Philip Newell uses for reconnecting with love. And there will be some comments about the Celtic cross. So we're actually within the Celtic cross this morning, which is great. So we've explored various reconnecting themes, haven't we? And so the ultimate theme, and perhaps the theme that connects all of the others, is the theme of reconnecting with love. In fact, John Philip says, perhaps the most obvious feature of the rebirthing of our lives and our world is at the same time its most undefinable feature, love. And he quotes Carl Jung, the analytic psychologist who reflected on love and the meaning of love. And Carl Jung said, "I've never been able to define it. What is it?" He says that the only way to express the ineffability of love is to name the unknown by more unknown. That is, by the name of God. And perhaps that's also reminiscent of our reading from the first epistle of John, where the writer says, God is love, and those who abide in God abide in love. So there's this powerful connection between the mystery of God and the mystery of love. So what I want to suggest this morning is that the rebirthing of love is at the heart of the rebirthing of Christianity. And that it is out of the experience of love and also the expression of love. So these 2 words, experience and expression, that all the other qualities flow, qualities that we've been thinking about in the book, qualities like compassion and non-violence and all the other qualities that we've been thinking about. All of us know that love is central to our lives as human beings. We know that without love, a baby dies. We know that without love, we as human beings become detached and depressed. It's difficult to live without love. And without love, even the life of the species on the planet would be likely to disappear. Love is also very much at the centre of our human aspirations, isn't it? And our experience in all sorts of ways. We speak and sing and dance our love. We touch and hug and kiss our love. And we respond to pain and suffering in other people with love and compassion. But where does this love come from? What is its source? Why is it here? What is its purpose? I've been reading a book by a Buddhist recently, and he's a Buddhist who's had an encounter with Jesus. And this is what he says about love. He says, when the eternal and the human meet, that's where love is born. That's where agape selfless love bursts forth not through escaping our humanity or trying to disappear into transcendence, but through finding the place where the eternal and the human come into union. That's what breathes a new spirit into our lives and opens us to the presence of the Christian message. And he's reflecting on that as a Buddhist. Now, I think we can say that since ancient times, love has shown itself to be at the heart of the universe. It is a great mystery, but spiritual experiences, mystical experiences and the like are often associated with the most profound sense of love, which is capable of changing the way that we understand the world, our understanding of who we are and the nature of this universe, that there is love at the heart of it in some mysterious way. Iris Murdoch, the Irish author and philosopher, is interesting here. She says that good is the magnetic center towards which love naturally moves. She says, love is the energy and passion of the soul in its search for the good. The force that joins us to good and joins us to the world through good is love. Its existence is the unmistakable sign that we are spiritual creatures, attracted by excellence and made for the good. So I think that ultimately the experience and the expression of love is at the center of a well-lived life and central to the spiritual path, including the way of Jesus. It's also at the core of the evolutionary journey, I think. Another favourite author, Steve McIntosh, says, we feel the potential for improvement. We sense the eros, or the love, of higher goodness yet to be reached. And we should not be surprised if this yearning for greater perfection carries with it a sense of the sacred. Freeing the world of war and poverty, protecting our fragile environment, creating social justice, reaching our personal potential, and giving our gift to others. These are the aspirations of love and the aspirations of the sacred. They flow out of a creative love, or eros, at the heart of the universe. So, as I've already said, John Philip Newell refers to the symbol of the Celtic cross. Particularly, he's thinking of St. Martin's cross, which stands in front of Iona Abbey. He says that the Celtic cross, he says that the cross of Christ becomes particularly potent when we draw a circle around it, as the Celtic tradition did. Then the cross becomes a mandala with 4 quadrants. And within those 4 quadrants, we can see the north and the south, the east and the west. We can see above and below, left and right. We can see inner and outer, singular and plural. And John Philip says this. He says, in the cross, the opposites are joined. It is a way of saying that heaven and earth, east and west, the divine and the human, can be brought together. The place where the lines intersect is at the heart of the cross. The only force that has the power to truly bring together the apparent opposites in our lives is love. I'm going to make some comments about the cross because it's a favourite theme of mine, and I think it's an important one, but also because I know it's a difficult one for us sometimes. I think we can say that the cross has become a global symbol of love for Christians. But it can also be difficult. We struggle with certain aspects of the way that it's been understood. And of course, Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, he admits that the cross would become a stumbling block or seem like foolishness. But he encourages us not to empty the cross of its power. And for me personally, the cross remains a very powerful symbol, but not only a symbol, an energy. And I just want to talk about that a little bit. So for many of us, it's difficult to see beyond the doctrine of substitutionary atonement that suggests that in an ancient culture where sacrifice seemed necessary to appease the gods or God, Jesus was offered in our place to satisfy the wrath of God. Now, to our modern minds, in a non-ritual sacrifice environment, this seems hideous and ridiculous and impossible. We've not been brought up surrounded by animals being sacrificed in the temple, and so this notion of substitutionary sacrifice just seems inappropriate. We often prefer to overlook the possibility, in my view, that in Jesus dying in this way, he actually brought to a conclusion, to an end, that whole sacrificial system, and that was a significant part of what he did, among other things. So the idea that love is expressed on the cross to appease God's anger runs counter to what we know about the nature of love. We know that true love does not have to be paid for. And true love is free. We know that in our human experience, that the most profound expression of love is given freely as a gift. And we sense within us deeply, surely this too is true of God's love. John Philip says, I hope the symbol of the cross can be redeemed, because essentially it is a symbol of the mystery at the heart of Christianity's gift to the world, the belief that love can reconcile all things. And I believe that the symbol of the cross is slowly being redeemed once more with further biblical and cultural insights from various theologians and philosophers. So for me, the symbol of the cross points to the love that was so present in Jesus that on behalf of the poor and the powerless, he was willing to confront the distorted power of empire with true power, which is the power of love. This is the type of love that we recognize in people like Gandhi and Oscar Romero, Martin Luther King and others. And of course we also recognize this sort of love and this quality of love within family and within community. When love is expressed, particularly when we're in difficult and painful situations of suffering. What I'm going to say next may seem surprising or controversial, I'm not sure. But I think it's quite helpful to remind ourselves that there was a substitution that took place at the cross. It was the substitution of Jesus for a condemned prisoner, whose name, interestingly, was Jesus Bar Abbas, Jesus, Son of the Father. Sacrifice was going to be happening on that day, at that time, but the victim was switched. There was a substitution that took place. And this was a sacrifice by the people, for the people. It was the baying of the crowd, not the requirement of God, that demanded that there be a sacrifice and that Jesus be crucified. So Jesus was literally exchanged and substituted for that man. There was a real person whose place Jesus took and for whose sake Jesus died. Jesus Barabbas is redeemed by Jesus the Christ. I think we often don't kind of think through the significance of that exchange that took place. So the traditional language of sacrifice, even of substitution, is true at least at that level. And then, of course, we could say, well, Jesus Barabbas, that could have been any one of us too. So then that makes you think, doesn't it? But where the theology goes wrong is the failure to realize that Jesus was willing to die to bring the injustice of sacrifice to an end once and for all. Greater love has no man than this, to lay down his life for his friends. All over the world we know that friends, human neighbours are being sacrificed in all sorts of ways, all of the time. Some are being cruelly sacrificed with the religious extremist blades or bullet. Others are being sacrificed at the bottom of a hierarchy of poverty and inequality. So the death of Jesus on the cross unleashed a universal symbol and a power of love that declared that scapegoating and sacrifice is wrong and must come to an end. And I think that it has been gradually working its power ever since. Jesus died on the cross in the place of all who suffer the cruel injustice of violence and murder at the hands of the powerful. The unraveling of violence and the revelation of the power of love is the continuing message and power of the cross. So there's a lot of sort of biblical studies and theological work that's going on in relation to this sort of idea, which sheds light on the meaning of Old Testament scriptures relating to sacrifice, and also New Testament scriptures, even the book of Hebrews, relating to sacrifice. Theologian James Allison is one of those people, and he talks about the reverse flow of the cross. The flow is not in the direction of sacrificing an innocent human being to appease God. It is quite the reverse. It is the willing sacrifice of an innocent human being filled full with God, a human being who had realized his own divinity. A sacrifice to fulfill the demands of human beings who were the ones so addicted to sacrifice and bloodshed. And to declare that sacrifice and bloodshed in all its forms is finished. As he said on the cross, it is finished. Cruel sacrifice is to be no more, for God is love and does not require sacrifice. So this is the reverse flow of the cross that James Allison talks about, the flow of divine love towards human beings embodied by Jesus to overturn the ways of violence and unjust scapegoating and sacrifice. Jesus offers his fullest expression of love so that we know all things are reconciled and that love is at the heart of the universe, for God is love. There is nothing to be done. There's every reason to know that we are loved and forgiven. There are no sacrifices to be made. God is love. So, John Philip describes a deep longing in the human soul. He says it's the yearning at the heart of everything to move into relationship. And that's why the Celtic high-standing cross, rooted firmly in the earth and standing tall in the great cathedral of nature, beckons us to join that yearning that is in all things, to be in relationship. He goes on to speak of a holy desire, the desire that as human beings we learn to live, knowing that we're made of God, which means we are made of love. A holy desire that we turn from the ways of separation and violence to become part of the creation of love. that the desire for higher goodness be translated into words and actions that make for a world of people and species that are reconciled to one another, and who, knowing their source in divine love, are ready to turn this holy desire into the conception and birth of a new world. So I'm going to end this series with some of the final words from the book. John Philip Newell says, St. Martin's Cross has a unique feature, and as far as we know, as far as he knows, it's a feature that does not occur in any other high cross in the world. At the heart of the cross, on one side, within its circle of oneness, is an image of the mother and child. She's holding the baby on her knee and suckling him at the breast, an image that points to the mother's capacity and willingness to labour in birth and nurture the newborn with her own body. Perhaps it is the image that belongs at the very heart of this book, for it invites us to be part of a sacred birthing in the world and to nurture it with our body, mind and soul. We have the capacity to do this. We are made as a means to love. It is God-given. The question is whether we will live what we truly are, which is love. So, God is love, and we are love. We are invited to experience love and to express it in our lives. May it be so.